Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 28th of May 2025. And goodness me, there's a lot of information to pack into this. I've been away for a few days, so there's a few bits and pieces that have been left over from several days of me being out of the country. And an awful lot has happened overnight as well. Just crazy times at the moment with regard to the Ukraine war, with what Russia is doing to Ukraine, although it's a quieter night in that respect, thankfully, last night, but what Ukraine is also doing to Russia. And last night was a very busy night for Ukrainian munitions flying their way into Russian airspace. So, and also a lot in the kind of other section. I've had to move an awful lot out as well, just because this video would have been too long. So I've got a really big military aid video coming up and a really big geopolitics video coming up at some point today. But I've also got to fit in going to see Mission Impossible in the cinema with my mate. So busy times at the moment. Nonetheless, let's start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. Of course, you can find them in the description below, linked there. Okay, 1,050 personnel lost is above the 1,000 mark, but it's the lower end of that. We have 4 tanks and 2 troop-carrying AFVs, low numbers there. 18 artillery systems below the daily average for the first time in a long time. So a real downtick in strikes, in destroyed equipment, in to some degree in personnel lost. Some have said that the weather has been fairly poor over the last few days in Ukraine, and that may well correlate with lower numbers of losses for the Russians. 52 vehicles and fuel tanks is one of the lowest numbers I've seen in that category for an awful long time. And you can see 65 drones there. That's very low for the amount of drones we would expect in a 24-hour period. We'll come on to drones later though. So Keith Kellogg, the envoy to Ukraine, has effectively confirmed, says Wall Translated, that Russia has lost nearly 1 million people in the war against Ukraine. A Trump representative stated the total losses in the Russia-Ukraine war have already reached 1.2 million people, and this number exceeds US losses in World War II. Really significant. Don't pay too much attention to casual mentions of numbers, maybe, but it could also be an indication that at the top of the American administration, there is an actual element of knowledge that the Russians have lost tremendous amounts of people, which kind of goes against Donald Trump's kind of both sidesism. He always talks about both sides losing heavily, but actually here is a potential admission. Although I don't know the details there of the claim, this is kind of third hand, that Keith Kellogg has admitted huge losses for the Russians. Now, the Washington Post reports Russia's military power in Ukraine is declining, with 1,500 daily casualties and Soviet tank reserves nearly exhausted. Trump is easing pressure on Putin despite Moscow's weakening position. So the real frustration there is, here's a time to put your foot on the neck of Russia, and here's a time that the US is pulling back. More on that in the geopolitics video, with real frustrations in terms of rhetoric and a lack of action, and wanting the G7 not to put pressure on the Russian oil industry, among other things. Right. Experts warn Russia may launch a final major offensive this summer as its capacity for sustained attacks diminishes. Ukrainian defenses hold, and both sides face a stalemate with long-range strikes dominating. More on potential attacks from Russia in the last section of this video. Okay, now just an example of what modern warfare looks like. It looks like Mad Max. This is as it says here, a Russian something. One presumes it's, oh no, is it a tank? I think it's a tank, but it's very difficult to tell. I mean, look at what they're making these days. That is a massively changed. It looks like it was a tank, and they've taken the turret off and they've created a compartment for troops there. That's very much a tank looking hull, but they've turned it into, that's rubber. Those are massive tires on top there. Just absolutely incredible. So like I've said to you before, tanks I think are becoming somewhat obsolete. I'm not saying they're obsolete in general in warfare. I'm saying in this particular war, with the front lines as they are, with the drone dominance, what they need to do is get troops from A to B to the contact line. Tanks are less useful So they seem to be adapting tanks to become glorified APCs, and this is your glorified APC. This is, goodness knows, what you described this, but actually it could well be quite effective. It's covered in what looks like thick rubber slats that go around that protect from drone explosions. And then once you get inside those slats, or chains, depending on where it is, chains at the front, you've got a rubber turret, for want of a better word, inside this large cope cage. And then you have basically a troop carrying compartment inside. So that's where we're at. And that's not to criticize that vehicle, by the way. That might well be exceptionally effective in doing what they want it to do. They don't want a tank. They want to get your people from A to B vehicle. And that is, you get your people from A to B vehicle when your main consideration are FPV drones. Here we have an article in Forbes claiming that Ukraine has used an AI mothership, or has used more than one AI mothership drones against Russia for the first time. This is a reusable Gogol M carrier drone that delivers 2 FPVs to a target at a distance of up to 300 kilometers. So that's a fixed wing drone up there, dropping FPV drones. After the release of the drones, the carrier returns. So that is not a one-way drone. If it can get 300 kilometers, hopefully it can then get back without getting shot down. The FPVs carry out attacks guided by AI. So one then presumes that these drones do not need a repeater. So that larger drone is not being used as a repeater. Fascinating stuff there. So that mother drone could be breaking new ground. We have a fiber optic drone here, apparently flying 42 kilometers and hitting a tank in a hangar. So first of all, we see vehicles being hit in hangars all the time here. We get a drone coming into a hangar, look, seeing 3 tanks there, and then I guess hitting one of them, or going and hitting a single, what looks like a BMP actually. But anyway, going to hit that, but at 42 kilometers, and then actually it looks like there are multiple drones being used here, unless that is the same drone and it decides to just go and hit the 3 tanks. But 42 kilometers, that's a record if it is indeed true, as far as I have seen. Pretty incredible stuff there. Here we have a hangar, a hidden or hiding Russian logistics vehicles, inspected from the inside by another fiber optic drone here. So the Ukrainians starting to ramp up usage of their fiber optics by the look of it, and they are finding an awful lot of these buildings that are hiding vehicles inside them and taking them out. Now, of course, the Russians will be doing the same to the Ukrainians, no doubt too. So don't think this is massively asymmetrical. I mean, it might be. I don't know the numbers, the comparable numbers between the two in terms of how much equipment they're finding and destroying. Now, we are hearing that the Russians are setting up ambushes on roadsides using fiber optic drones. So that's been a real challenge for the Ukrainians, waiting for Ukrainian vehicles. I have a feeling that was a problem up in Kursk as well. But as an example of countering this tactic, the Ukrainian National Police Brigade, the Kizak, have often practiced combing the roads with drones and then destroying them with drones. So these are drones, FPV drones, acquiring the targets of dormant, if you like, fiber optic drones that are sitting on the road or next to the road, combing the roads first with drones, and then, I presume, allowing their own vehicles to drive down the roads. So, yeah, that is interesting Russian tactic, the counter tactic from the Ukrainians. But again, I don't know if that works both ways as well, because we know that the Ukrainians have been utilizing kind of ambush drones as too. Okay, another one, Saki Airfield. So this is an airfield in Crimea, between the 1st of May and the 3rd of May, presumably hit by an FPV drone. The control center of the Orion drone and possibly the drone itself was hit, according to Cyber Boroshno. Now, this is interesting because it's hit with an FPV drone, and that is unusual for somewhere out of range of FPV drones, unless you are using, I don't know how far from the coast Saki is, so it could be using an unmanned sea vehicle as a repeater drone, or it could be using one of those motherships that we've just seen. But interesting that it's taking out an Orion drone potentially, and some facility to do with that. Now, the Orion drone is the equivalent of kind of an MQ-9 Reaper drone or Bayraktar TB2. It's a long range, often reconnaissance, but can also carry missiles on drone. So it's a fairly significant Russian drone. In fact, I believe an Orion factory might have been hit last night in Russia during Ukraine's drone strikes on Russia. But anyway, that's an interesting little nugget there as far as I'm concerned. What else do we have? So we've got some footage of F-16s, and like, if I don't show you all these videos, they are here for your reference. And all of these videos are linked below in the description. Sometimes there are too many links for the description, so I have to cut off some of the last, the other section. But almost always, all of the hits and losses and strikes sources are linked in the description below, so you can check out the videos. Because often, I mean, I'll probably get restricted anyway from what I've shown you of drones dropping IDs there, but I basically can't often show you all the videos due to restrictions. But anyway, F-16s attacking inside Russia. So this is really good news. So no reports here showing cool footage of a Ukrainian Air Force F-16s striking Russian military positions in Kursk Oblast with high-precision GBU-39 guided glide bombs. Now, the analyst says Ukrainian F-16s attacking inside Russia. That's a heading you never would have expected to have seen 5 years ago. But here we are. Just ask yourself now how that's possible. Where's the Russian Air Force and its anti-air batteries? Russians complain that Ukrainians have obtained a quantum leap in the battlefield. Technology, electronic warfare, AI, drones and artillery. They have no response. They don't have the flexibility to react. Brilliant. Brilliant. As Ukraine does. And by the way, I know how to mute tabs. You don't need to tell me about it. I love having a battle against the music. It's just my thing. Right, so you hear these competing narratives that are, Ukraine have this asymmetrical advantage where they're really leaps and bounds above where Russia are in terms of X, Y, and Z. And then you hear, the Russians are really doing well in this context. And it's such a confusing information space that we're dealing with, where you have different sides claiming different things, and sometimes the same side claiming opposite things, and so on and so forth. But here is at least one claim that the Ukrainians are having some kind of technological advantage. Now, MiG-29s, this is a really significant looking hit here. It's a MiG-29 with guided glide bombs, precision striking. Here it says across all fronts, eliminating Russian positions, including FSB officers. So this is at Hlotove in the Belgorod region, so across the border, again striking inside Russia with Ukrainian aviation, releasing guided glide bombs. So that's something that Russians were doing an awful lot, and the Russians were doing that right across the front line. Now the Ukrainians appear to be, at least, I keep saying this, it seems like they are using guided glide bombs an awful lot more, because we're seeing an awful lot more footage. And some of this footage is really quite impressive. Here is a building that becomes a non-building, and it is absolutely shellacked by that, with all sorts of debris flying out all over the place. And apparently that took out FSB officers as well. So good news there for the Ukrainians. Now, we've got a claim from Prune60 that Moscow's on fire. So hashtag Russia on fire. Fire broke out at the Pioneer Shopping Center in Korolev in Moscow region. Now, I don't know if that's got anything to do with anything, but to do with the war. Yet we have seen a spate of shopping malls burned. This could be sabotage. It could be careless smoker. It could be an insurance job on a shopping center, because we know that the Russian economy is in trouble. More on that in the last section of this video. So anyway, just hashtag Russia on fire there. And there's more of that. Certainly, in terms of wildfires, it is wildfire season, it looks. And like I've said to you many times before, conscripted soldiers who would be doing their national service would, in times of peace, be utilized to fight wildfires, but of course they are now very busy doing other things. That's been the case for the last couple of years. The wildfire season has been really difficult for Russia to deal with. In the far east of Russia, there's another problem, says Tim White, hashtag Russia on fire. Wildfires are causing havoc in Buryatia. They probably don't have many firefighters considering how they've bled this region dry of men, sent them to the front lines. The village of Sulkara has been evacuated. So actually, it's not just the fact that the conscripted soldiers have been that had their attentions placed elsewhere, but also possibly firefighters being attracted with higher wages to go and fight on the front lines rather than continue being firefighters. So that I don't know if that's the case, but could well be an issue. Now, in Russia's Belgorod region, a train was blown up by a bomb planted under the tracks. So a bit of sabotage here in Novoskolsky district. A rail traffic there has been suspended, according to local officials. So useful bit of sabotage, hopefully. Right, we're going to move on to distant strikes, and there is quite a lot to talk about here. Okay, first of all, as ever, we go to what the Russians did last night, and a quieter night, comparably, for the Ukrainians, luckily, but still a significant number of drones thrown into Ukrainian airspace. 88 drones, 71 taken out, 34 shot down, 37 suppressed by electronic warfare or lost in location. So that has left 17 drones to have got through. That is a high percentage of 88. So that is a challenge, but who knows whether those 17 drones hit targets, were decoys, whatever. But yeah, 17 getting through. I don't really know of any battle damage assessment from last night at all. And 6 missiles got through. 5 Iskander-M or KN-23, the Korean version, ballistic missiles, and 1 KH-5969 missile was sent into Ukraine and could well have hit their targets. Have no idea. I'm guessing that military targets have been hammered in Ukraine over the last week. Successive nights, not so bad last night, although 6 missiles getting through is going to hurt. But 3 nights before that, you got 1,000 drones being sent into Ukraine, causing an awful lot of havoc for, no doubt, the Ukrainian military. We had a night where Starokonstantinov Air Base was hammered by, 6 missiles at once, and you're thinking, probably going to have caused quite some damage to that airbase, maybe the infrastructure to the airbase. Hopefully, things like the F-16s and whatnot, as I presume they're probably there, are protected. But I have a feeling that air defense systems have been attrited over the last, probably over the last 6 months, to be honest. I think the Russians are, as you would expect, seeing air defense systems as target number 1. And there are rumours that Patriots have been degraded, hit by Russian air defences, Russian missiles or drones. Now, here we have a claim, this is from a couple of days ago, that the drones that hit Kiev, so back on the 24th, we're now the 28th, so this is, the 4 nights ago. The drones that attacked Kiev at night were equipped with metal objects. Local media reported this makes them more deadly. The damage radius and the number of potential civilian casualties are increasing. And Europe is now hoping for China to act as a mediator. China certainly supplied components for these drones to Russia. China will never mediate, says Jürgen Naudet. I mean, this looks like sort of shrapnel, fragmentation, flying out everywhere from these warheads, meaning that, when they're flying into densely populated civilian areas, these are war crimes on wings, and that's pretty horrific. Russia aims apparently to produce 500 drones daily as Ukraine strikes back with a 400 drone attack. Russia has received orders, says Euromaidan Press, to produce 500 drones a day, but currently maintains capacity for only 300 to 350 a day, according to Ukrainian President Zelensky. So Zelensky saying that himself. But my goodness, 300 to 350 drones a day, assuming these are, one-way attack drones, the Shahid drones, is a phenomenal number. I don't know how many of those would be decoys and without warheads, but still, that is a massive number. And to go up to 500, we've kind of reported this before, there have been rumors before, is a real problem for the Ukrainians. So they're aiming on producing 500 drones a day. But he did also mention that he recalled a recent successful operation by the Ukrainian armed forces, which used 400 small drones simultaneously and destroyed 40 pieces of Russian military hardware. So that's a simultaneous attack, a swarm of 400 small, I presume, FPV drones working in unison to take out 40 pieces of Russian military hardware. I don't know any further details of that, but it sounds pretty impressive. Now, the other night I did report this, but I just want to give you the human aspect to the horrors that Russia are inflicting upon Ukraine. Russia killed 3 siblings the other night in an attack. That was in Zhytomyr. Their parents lost all 3 of their children, Stanislav, Roman, and Tamara. A Russian missile hit the Martinuk's family home near Zhytomyr region. Mum and dad are in hospital. The doctors are fighting for mum's life. And these 3 children died. And we need to remember the human cost of these horrors inflicted upon Ukraine. This is Russia committing war crime after war crime, in my opinion. Roman, 17, was about to graduate from school. Stanislav and Tamara will forever be 8 and 12 years old. Deepest condolences, says Anton Gerashenko. A heartbreaking and devastating tragedy caused by Russia. Think of all the time and effort put into these children with all the hopes and dreams of their future. What you would imagine them being, the love you've given them, tended to their development, and then snuffed out in one fell swoop. That is what Russia is doing on a nightly basis to Ukraine, and it is horrific. Now, Ukraine fighting back with drones, but Ukraine, it appears, trying damned hard to hit military and military industrial sites rather than throw their stuff into apartment buildings and into the middle of a capital city or into other cities around Ukraine. Now, drones attacked the Kronstadt drone development plant in the Moscow region of Dubna last night, according to Max 25, the Russian Defense Ministry. So the MOD apparently reports, and I'm giving you 3 different numbers, and I don't know what it is, but the Russian MOD, according to Max 25, reported that almost 300 drones were shot down. So that's a massive night of drone activity. Then, no report says 115 Ukrainian drones reportedly struck targets deep in Russia overnight. Kronstadt drone factory near Moscow and the Elma Technopark, key centers for Russian drone and microelectronics production, were hit, according to Russian media. So does this mean that 115 got through, but 300 drones were shot down? Does that mean 415 drones? So I don't really know, but there are so many. I talked to you yesterday in a live stream last night, but also a number of times recently. I'm mentioning every day that there are lots of claims of Ukrainian drones being thrown into Russia, but we get very little battle damage assessment. There's very little footage coming out of drones actually doing anything, so we just are unsure of how successful these Ukrainian drones are. Last night's attack went through into this morning, and there is quite a lot of drone footage in the daytime of Ukrainian drones actually finding their targets. So there is at least some success for the Ukrainians, and as I mentioned, an awful lot of footage coming out, but it might be a lot of footage of similar sorts of awful lot of different angled footage of the same drones. Very successful hit by Ukraine, though, came in a town called Dubna, says Tim White. It's in the Moscow region, actually much nearer the city of Tver. But the crucial thing is a target. The Kronstadt company is a leading drone manufacturer, as mentioned. So, but another number here. Incidentally, the Kremlin says 296 Ukrainian drones were destroyed between 9 p.m. last night and 7 a.m. this morning. They don't say how many got through, but this far in the town of Chekhov, south of Podolsk in the Moscow region, was caused by debris, which can be seen at the site. So there we have 296. We had 300 before. We had 115 reaching target. So who knows what the exact figures were. Now, as mentioned, lots of footage coming out. Drones launched a massive overnight attack, says Euromaidan Press, on Moscow Oblast. And it's interesting that for several nights in a row, Moscow has been heavily targeted, and that has an effect on the population there. You've got pictures of, in fact, I'm going to go to the end here to show you a image of, or video of, nope, where is it? Of Russians. Actually, I don't have it. I'm pretty sure I had imagery. No, I don't. Of Russians running away. Oh, here it is. So this is from 4 nights ago, right? But it's kind of indicative. I mentioned Tula earlier, said Tim White, and neighbouring Lipetsk region is also warning residents to take cover as drones head into the area. For the third time in 2 days, those in Yelets are running for shelters. So Yelets is a place that have been targeted 3 nights in a row. And you have people losing electricity, but actually more so internet coverage, as either things are struck or stuff is turned off. And people in Russia are really feeling the war at the moment because the Ukrainians are sending these massive swarms of drones into Russia. So here we have imagery of Russians running to the shelters. So this is something that's becoming more typical for Russians as the Ukrainians are hitting Russia more consistently with drones, and with larger numbers of drones. You are seeing lots of air raids go off, or hearing lots of air raids go off, people running for shelters on a fairly constant basis, and people complaining. And this is the war coming back to Russia. So they're getting a taste of their own medicine. So, okay, going back to last night, drones, according to Euromaidan Press, launched a massive overnight attack on Moscow Oblast and attempted to strike Moscow itself, according to Mayor Sergei Sobyanin. The assault reportedly targeted the Elma Technology Park in Zelonograd and the Kronstrad drone manufacturing plant in Dubna. Now, this looks like unfortunately a near miss. So it is hit to the side of this facility. I was thinking, dang, that's not caused much damage. But actually, there's a fair bit of damage when you look at other imagery that's coming out of this. So this one here, you can see that, yeah, there's a fair bit of damage done, but it looks somewhat cosmetic rather than hitting the heart of whatever facility that was. It's hit the edge of it. Who knows how much long-term damage that would have done. Russia says 33 drones have been shot down approaching Moscow during the night. The biggest incident is clearly this at the Micron microelectronics plant in Zelenograd in Moscow Oblast. The mayor of Moscow insists this is not serious damage and was caused by drone debris. The Micron microelectronics plant was not hit by debris. And how do I know it was a direct hit on Micron Electronics in Zelonograd and not drone debris? I saw the video. And take note, no alarms sounding. So there are no alarms as this drone, and it's one of several we've seen last night where we see the terminal phase of the drone suddenly diving and then slamming into whatever target it is. Now that is the building we just seen, and that is a direct, well, it's not a direct hit actually. It has not quite directly hit, but that has done what I guess it was programmed to do. Doesn't look like there's electronic warfare or anything taking it out. It just slightly missed the target, unfortunately. So here we have a video of the drone flying over there. Ukrainian drone striking Zelonograd, Moscow region in Russia this morning. In the past, it was supposed to be the Soviet version of Silicon Valley. So that looks like the drone that we just saw, but actually now a little bit more zoomed in, and it comes down to hit that building there, and there's your terminal phase, and it just blows up on the edge of that building. So yeah, lots of footage coming out from Russia. There's what we've just seen. That's that same strike, but a number of places having hits recorded. key research and production center for electronics and microelectronics. But also here, the Dubna machine building plant in the Moscow region, burning after being struck by Ukrainian drones. A plant produces missiles and drones. Now, my frustration, but I don't know if this is justified, because it may be that they have struck this with or attempted to strike it with 40 to 50 drones, and most of them get shot down. And here we got one getting through. But I would be picking each of these facilities and hitting each of them with 40 to 50 drones. So it's really frustrating. You're seeing the odd drone here and the odd drone there landing at a target, rather than them being absolutely hammered with a huge number of drones each place. So produces missiles and drones. That was targeted. And here it looks like the same area, so that could well be that one. It's certainly landed right on the roof of that particular site. Drone strike on the territory of Kronstadt Drone Development Enterprise in Dubna, Moscow, where, among other things, the Russian Orion drones are manufactured. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This is a place that supposedly manufactures the Orion, that large MQ-9 Reaper type drone, where we have seen one get hit, possibly, and certainly the facility that services them being hit at Saki Airfield in Crimea. Okay, what else? Tim White reports that an electric train was damaged overnight in Moscow. The report says the excavator park nearby was also damaged. However, surely that's not sensitive information. So the fact that the video is silenced and blurred makes me suspicious of more important things here being hit, says Tim White, as you have a blurred video showing some kind of damage to a railway facility, or possibly a locomotive. What else? So now we're going back to previous nights where I've been away, and a few statements. So this is 4 days ago. Kyiv Independent reporting, the Air Force reporting, the Ukrainian Air Force, that Russia's upgraded ballistic missiles are harder to intercept by Patriots. It complicates the interception, but doesn't make it impossible. Ukraine's Air Force spokesman Yuri Ihnat said, "I think our partners are already working to improve the system's capabilities." Excellent news there, but on the improvement, but a real challenge for the Ukrainians, that the Russians are improving their tactics, their routes, their drones themselves, with the electronics on board being much more electronic warfare resistant. The Chinese certainly helping in that context. Now, quote from Zelensky here. This is from today, actually. We're using Patriot missiles carefully, just like before. We're tackling the toughest threats, ballistic and cruise missiles. We have the rockets, and partners are helping. We're getting close to decisions on licensing other air defense systems. So that's interesting, but I can't share details yet. You would think other air defense systems, you would hope that would be anti-ballistic missile capability systems, but I don't know. So the only ones that you can think of really are SAMP-T and Patriot. So, but if he's talking about others, then that would leave SAMP-T. Otherwise, it's going to be something like NASAMS or IRIS-T, something similar to that, that the Ukrainians are possibly going to localize their production of, and that would help them out. But of course, really, they need to be taking down... Well, actually, no. So ballistic missiles are a challenge, and especially if they've stockpiled 500 ballistic missiles. That's one rumor that's out there. I have no idea whether it's true. My thought would be, if you've got 500 ballistic missiles, you'd be using them now. Like, just throwing them in now. I mean, what are you waiting for? Because you won't have the launchers to be able to sustain, firing that many missiles. So you've got more missiles than you could fire in any given night. So I don't know why you'd be waiting for more and more. But, that you send 100 ballistic missiles in a night for 5 nights, and you would absolutely cripple Ukraine, I'm sure. But you haven't done that. But there are rumors that you have 500. So who knows? Who knows? So you might argue that the number one target for Ukraine at the moment would be, in terms of aerial threats, ballistic missiles. So you want Patriots and SAMP-Ts are your number one priority. Rumours as well that they've run out of SAMP-T interceptors. But on the other hand, if Russia are producing 500 drones, one-way attack drones, Shahid drones a day, then you could argue that actually it's more of a priority that they take out the drones. And so something like the NASAMS at IRIS-T as well as mobile air defense systems and Gepards and whatnot, are super important. Now they're flying them at their theories that they're flying them at sort of 2 kilometer heights to stop them getting shot down by low tech stuff, or that they fly low and then when they get to their targets they go high before they do a dive. So that not only makes a dive quicker and harder to shoot down, but also the fact that they're coming from a height makes them harder to shoot down as well. So yeah, those licensing of other air defense systems could be very useful, whether they are just anti-Shahed or anti-ballistic missile. Now, NASA satellite imagery shows a large-scale fire burning at the site of the 304th ammunition depot. That's interesting. So this was yesterday from Max 25. I've not seen this mentioned anywhere else, but it's apparently been closed since 2011, but obviously maybe not. Maybe it does have munitions there, because that's some significant firms data coming from the Amur region of Russia, and I assume that's an example of something being hit that we otherwise didn't know about, possibly data emerging a little bit later. Like I was saying, we don't hear too much about what Ukraine is successfully striking, but sometimes data does emerge. Orozovo in the Belgorod region, a substation there has been hit and completely destroyed by a drone. So that will affect Russia in the Belgorod region. So Orozovo is just south of Valuki, where a Russian locomotive was attacked by a Ukrainian drone the other day. Like nearby Valuki, it's a railway hub in its own right, and the Ukrainians may be trying to derail a future Russian offensive headed southwards. So that could be an interesting strike that's more significant than you might think, not just a random substation. Now, Ukraine says it's destroyed one of the occupiers' military trains in the Zaporizhia region. The drone unit of Intel unit says it hit the fuel-laden train yesterday on the Verkhny Tokmak Molochansk Fedorivka section. At least 3 fuel tanks were destroyed of the train, and that's as it was moving there by the looks of it. And that is something that I had expected to happen way more often than it has. I am quite surprised that trains are getting away with moving on a frequent basis. I would have been like doing these kind of strikes all day, every day for the last 3 years. So obviously they know better than I do. So there is a utility for hitting them, but it's not the top of the priority list. I don't know why. Or the other option could be it's hitherto been practically impossible for them to do so. Maybe the distance that they can get off the kinds of drones they need to use to do that has not been achievable for the Ukrainians. Final one in this section. I said it's going to be a long video. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that Putin's helicopter was in Kursk region. So when he visited Kursk back, I guess, about a week ago, during a recent massive drone attack on Russia, it's reported that 1,177 drones were destroyed over Russia during the days from May the 20th through to May the 22nd. So again, we're now hearing that even more drones were sent into Russia over that like purple patch for the Ukrainians. So both sides have thrown in just phenomenal amounts of drones into each country. Actually, from either side, we have relatively little battle damage assessment, so which makes me think that from the Russian point of view, they probably have struck some serious military targets in Ukraine, and that's why we're not hearing about it. And from a Ukrainian point of view, I just don't know, because you could see it as the other way around, that we're not hearing from Russia because actually they've successfully hit some really high value targets, or the Russians are just very good at taking out these Ukrainian drones, that the Russian air defense is operating at pretty good levels. I don't know. I just don't know. Right. Okay. On to other bits and pieces. Russia is mobilizing, according to Zelensky himself, between 40 and 45,000 troops per month. That is a huge number and much higher than we previously thought. It was thought to be 30,000, then maybe 30 to 40,000. He is claiming 40 to 45,000. That is Russia replacing their own troops at replacement levels, as in, more than 1 for 1. So that means that they will be able to accumulate troops, because the numbers that we're seeing on a daily basis, they've actually dropped now to around about 1,000 a day. They were up at 1,500 a day. 40 to 45,000 gets them replacing what they're losing, and therefore able to reconstitute units along the front line, or maybe amass troops in certain areas. He also says that the Ukrainians are able at the moment to recruit between 25 and 27,000 a day. So, okay, that is more than 1 to 2. So what that be? About 1 to 1 point, I don't know, assume it's 1 to 1.7. I don't know if my maths is correct there. If that's 1 to 1.7, if that's all true, the question is, are the Ukrainians attriting Russian troops at above the 1 to 1.7 rate? So there are claims from the Ukrainians that they are attriting the Russians at 1 to 10, 1 to 7, 1 to 12. I've seen all of those numbers recently. Now, it depends. That might be localized for certain areas of the front line where we're doing really well, and they are absolutely committing military harakiri here. And we're attriting them at this crazy rate. But actually, in general, the ratio is very different. But I assume that the Ukrainians are attriting the Russians at above that level. So although those are challenging figures, what the Ukrainians need to be doing is having beneficial ratios, so that this situation means that actually, relative to the Russians, the Ukrainians may be getting more troops, if you see what I mean, in the long run. Quote, when the US sends signals that it wants to do something positive with Russia, then Russia ramps up its mobilization, said Zelensky, according to the NV news outlet. So the claim here then is that this is as a result of American rhetoric that they've ramped up their mobilization. Now, Zelensky's warned that Russia, and here I'm going to hit you with a number of competing, differing places and troop numbers. So Zelensky is, according to no reports, warning that Russia is amassing over 50,000 troops near Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region, signaling a potential new offensive. Now, this to me seems pretty plausible, because they are attacking down into Sumy and they are having some success there. So that is a worry, and his claim is that 50,000 Russians are amassed there. Then we hear from the Washington Post that Russia is expected to mount a major offensive this summer in Donetsk region, so that's along the east. Kremlin plans to carry out smaller attacks along the border of Ukraine's northeastern Sumy and Kharkiv regions. There are currently 125,000 Russian troops stationed on the border of Sumy and Kharkiv regions. So going now across from Sumy all the way to Kharkiv, instead of 50,000 in Sumy, we've got 125,000 across the two. Now that seems like a massive number to me, pretty incredible. And then we hear Max 25 here saying, this is coming from Die Bild, a German tabloid newspaper, Putin's big offensive will begin in June. Russia will try to advance to Dnipro, Kharkiv and Sumy. So now we've added Dnipro-Petrovsk, which will be from the Donetsk region. The end of the war in Ukraine is not in sight. Everything points to escalation now. The Russian army, after a three-month pause, has transferred thousands of new soldiers to the front, reinforced civilian transport with tanks, and increased its air force. The Russian army has learned to wage drone warfare, has mass-produced new drones, and now wants to use them. The Russians are copying the tactics of the opposing side and thereby achieving success. With thousands of new drones and electronic warfare equipment, they are hunting Ukrainian logistics and disabling dozens of them every day. So this is, I think, somewhat plausible. So I think the Russians have looked at where the Ukrainians are having the greatest success and say, well, we need to do that, as obviously you would. Like, what are we not doing well enough? What are they doing really well? Why aren't we doing what they're doing? Okay, so ramp up production of these drones, get China to help us as much as possible. Produce, recruit, and use these drones in the way that the Ukrainians are using them to absolutely hammer the Ukrainians, and then amass troops to attack in these regions. And I think it's pretty plausible that they would attack and try and get into Dnipro-Petrovsk Oblast, so that they can then add that to their constitution and say they then have divine rights to the whole of that oblast. Right, and just very quickly on, Sky News is reporting that what's left of Russia's Kursk army is staring down Kharkiv. Analysts say Moscow's depleted units near Kharkiv may be preparing for a limited summer push. And then that's probably enough for today. I have, or at least for this particular video, I have all of these tabs to go through with you with regard to what has been happening in Ukraine. I will leave that for I think either a later video today or tomorrow. Just to leave you also with lovely footage coming from the swapping of the POWs, 1,000 for 1,000 broadly speaking. Some wonderful footage coming up from there that you can see variously online. And that's really good news to see. Sources in Ukraine say that Trump posted that the first prisoner exchange had been done before it actually even started the other day. Kiev was just thankful it didn't cause a late derailment of the agreement. So that was pretty controversial. I didn't report it on the day, but Trump put out on social media that it was happening, and actually there should have been OPSEC, and that was a boo-boo from Trump. And then some, just beautiful footage of people. You have a lot of wives coming to hopefully coming to these exchange places because they don't know whether their husband's there, and you hear stories of like one wife coming the first day, and then the second day, and then the third day finding her husband's there, but they don't know whether they're going to be there, and it's just absolutely lovely. But then there are so many wives that come with pictures of their husbands, and they aren't met with a happy ending, with their husbands still being in captivity. So some beautiful videos taken of people meeting their loved ones. So really good news that that's happened. So I'm gonna leave you on that positive. Anyway, that's enough from me for this video. I'll be recording again later today, but thanks so much for indulging me in a long 45-minute first video of the day. But so much to go through to catch up with what I've been missing in the last 3 days of being away. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.